Hello everyone and welcome to another EMP tutorial. Today I want to show you how you can work with the API. So this is more developer tutorial, I would say. And yeah, so let's dive into it. So to be able to use the API, you need to have the API permission, and to be able to manage API tokens you need the token management permission. So this one is probably more an admin kind of thing, and this one is basically for the UI part here. So even if a user does not have this specific permission, it will still work with, like the API is still available through the token that they are using. So let's go to the API section here, and you basically see these are all the API endpoints that you have here. You can do here, so you can click to open these different panels. And here you get explanation how you can log in. So first you can use the header API token with your token. And the other way that's mainly for testing, is you can actually have use your session ID to execute API requests. And this one only works if you have the API permission, as far as I know. So let's see what we can do with the API. When you have access to the UI, you have access to everything. Your tokens will have access to specific API endpoints. So for example, one thing that I like to use is the query endpoint. So here you can click on example. So you have the documentation, sure, and so on. But here you can actually execute the query as you want. So you can define the metrics and the parameters on the UI and test directly if this will work with clicking the submit button. So, and here you basically now get the result. So these are like the parameters that you can give to your API call. You get a URL example that you also can click and open, and this would be like executing the API call itself. And you also get curl examples this is now with the cookies. So for example, let's take this one and put that on a command line. Good, so this is already executed. And you see you get back the response from the API. Now you have get examples, you have curl examples. This API basically does not make any difference if you use get or post. This is why I did that, is to make it just easier to implement. So it's often easier to just have everything in the URL and without the need of having to define a post body. So this is basically one thing that you can do. You can even, if you have the API token, as far as I know, you can also put it inside of a URL here. Exactly, so API token. And then you could potentially even just put the URL somewhere in on a Confluence page, wiki page, and have it for data exports or something like that. Good, so this is one thing regarding the API. So you have all the things that you can create your calls, and you also, in this example here, you have down here you have the response that you will get. One thing that is important, this thing is actually executing. So if you are playing around with it, there are certain endpoints that are actually writing data. For example, this one, the push statistics. So if you go here, examples, and you click submit, this one will actually execute and write to the database. So this one now has written successfully the statistics, and so it's probably good to have, when you play with writing things, writing endpoints, it's good to do that in a testing environment and not in a productive environment. Good, so now just that you see how this whole thing works, this is a little bit the admin section. You won't see that if you don't have the managed tokens, but I will now go into here. I already have one token here, and I can add another token. It just gives me some random string that I can also enhance, for example, and I used to give a name in the front, so tutorial. The reason for that is in the log files we will have something like this. So we have an obfuscated version of the token, but we will still see that when we put a name in the front here, why this is, from which token it actually is coming from and what it is relating to. So you can put kind of a usage, for example, let's say this is used for the intranet, and the other token would be used for export. So you see a little bit what is the token used for, and directly in the logs without having to go back to the API token and so on. Good, so I can define a responsible user. Let's see, what kind of users do we have? Let's say we have the dashboard creator as the responsible user. This field is basically doing nothing except that the one creating the token knows who to contact in case something is up with this token. Now the permission of user, this one is actually doing something. So certain endpoints, they need specific permissions. For example, when you execute the query will check permissions. So for that, let me just create a user, for example, API token permissions user. Let's just throw a password in here. Create user, good. And now, for example, we want to execute the query, and this query has credentials. Now, it would be bad if this user wouldn't have access to these credentials, because he couldn't execute this query. So we share this with the API token permission user. Good. So now the token, this specific user has access to this credential shared with editor. And now I can add this user here, and this user will be able to access the credentials. Good, so I create a token. now I created it, and now here the token administrator, and I gave here a message, please do that, can now add the permissions. So for example, we want to be able to execute a query, and what else do we have? We also want to be able to read configurations or something and get data from the stats. So now this user has, this token has access to these endpoints, but not to other endpoints. And yeah, basically that's it. That's how you use the API. Okay, one small thing more, just that I have showed you that as well. So if I have here the header, I should be able now to throw that in. And this would be the header API token. As far as I remember, did I write it correctly? API token, good. And yeah, looks fine. It gets the results. It executes query, execute, perfect. And yeah, this would basically be what you will use for accessing the API. And yeah, I wish you a lot of fun grabbing data from EMP and reuse it in other applications or whatever you will do with it.